I thought I was being smart, careful, even. She was my tour guide, professional, sweet. I told myself this was different from all those other stories I'd heard. But 6 months later, I was sitting in a hotel room with nothing left. Not my savings, not my dignity. Just me and the truth I'd been too blind to see. The airplane touched down in Cebu 3 days after I signed my divorce papers. 3 days after 30 years of marriage officially ended. 3 days after my ex-wife took the house, half my pension, and whatever was left of my self-respect. I was 57 years old, and I felt ancient. The kind of tired that sleep doesn't fix. The kind of empty that fills every room you walk into. I needed to get away. Needed to feel something other than failure. So I booked a ticket to the Philippines and told myself it was just a vacation. Just 2 weeks to clear my head before I went back to Ohio and figured out what the hell I was supposed to do with the rest of my life. I hired a tour guide through the hotel. They said her name was Sherlyn and that she spoke excellent English. I didn't care about any of that. I just wanted someone to show me around so I didn't have to think. She met me in the lobby the next morning, 25 years old, long dark hair, a smile that could light up a room. She wore jeans and a white blouse, and she looked at me like I was the most interesting person she'd meet all day. "Mr. Derek, welcome to Cebu," she said, extending her hand. Her handshake was firm, confident. "I'm Sherlyn. I'll be your guide today. Are you ready to see some beautiful places?" "Just Derek is fine," I said. "And yeah, I'm ready." We started at Magellan's Cross. She told me the history, the significance, how the Spanish explorers planted it in 1521. I wasn't really listening. I was watching her, the way she moved, the way she spoke. She had this energy that made you want to be near her, made you forget, just for a moment, that you were alone. "Do you like history, Derek?" she asked as we walked toward the basilica. "Not particularly," I admitted, "but I like listening to you talk about it." She laughed. Not a polite laugh. A real one. "You're funny. Most tourists just take photos and leave. You actually pay attention. Maybe I'm just a good listener, or maybe you're lonely," she said, and the way she said it wasn't mean. It was gentle, understanding, like she could see right through me. I didn't know what to say to that, so I just smiled and followed her into the church. We spent the rest of the morning walking through the old Spanish district. She told me about her life, how she grew up in a small barangay outside the city, how she put herself through college by working 3 jobs, how she became a tour guide because she loved meeting people from different countries. She asked me about Ohio, about my life, about why I came to the Philippines. "Just needed a change," I said. "Needed to be somewhere that didn't remind me of everything I'd lost." "Divorce?" she asked. I nodded. "I'm sorry," she said, and she sounded like she meant it. By lunch, we were sitting at a small restaurant near the waterfront. She ordered for both of us in rapid Tagalog, then turned to me with that smile again. "You trust me?" "Should I?" I asked. "Maybe," she said, eyes sparkling. "Or maybe I'll poison you and take all your money." I laughed. It felt good to laugh. "Well, the money's mostly gone anyway, so joke's on you." She leaned forward, resting her chin in her hand. "Tell me about your marriage." "If you want." I wasn't sure I wanted to, but something about the way she looked at me made it feel safe. So I told her. About the 30 years, about how we grew apart, about how my ex-wife stopped seeing me years before she left, about how I felt invisible in my own home. "That's sad," Sherlyn said quietly. "Everyone deserves to be seen." "Yeah, well," I said, staring at my food. "Life doesn't always work out the way you plan." She reached across the table and touched my arm, just a light touch, just for a second, but it was enough to make me look up. "You're here now," she said. "That's a start." That evening, as the sun set over the ocean, we sat on a bench near the port. The sky was orange and pink and purple. I hadn't felt this calm in years. "Thank you," I said, "for today, for listening." "It's my job," she said. "No," I said. You didn't have to do that. You could have just shown me around and left it at that." She turned to me, and for a moment, she looked vulnerable. "Young, maybe I wanted to," she said softly. "Maybe I needed to talk to someone too." I didn't ask what she meant. I didn't want to push. But as I walked back to my hotel that night, I couldn't stop thinking about her. About the way she laughed. About the way she made me feel like I mattered. I told myself it was nothing. She was my tour guide. She was paid to be nice. But deep down, I knew I wanted to see her again. And I knew that was dangerous. The next morning, I called the tour company and booked her for another day, and then another. By the end of the week, I wasn't even pretending it was about sightseeing anymore. We'd sit at cafes for hours, talking about everything and nothing. She told me about her family, about her mother who was sick, about her younger brother who was in college and needed help with tuition, about how hard it was to make ends meet, even with 3 jobs. "I don't mean to complain," she said one afternoon, stirring her coffee. "I know I'm lucky, but sometimes it feels like I'm drowning." "You're not complaining," I said. "You're being honest. There's a difference." She looked at me, and something shifted in her expression. Softened. "You're easy to talk to, Derek. I feel like I can say anything to you." "Same," I said, and I meant it. That weekend, she took me to a beach in Moalboal. Just the 2 of us. The water was crystal clear. The sand was white. It felt like paradise. We sat on the shore as the sun began to set, and she leaned her head on my shoulder. "This is nice," she said. "Yeah," I said, my heart pounding. "It is." She turned to look at me, her face so close I could feel her breath. "Derek, can I ask you something?" "Anything." "Do you feel it too? This connection between us?" I swallowed hard. I knew I should say no. I knew I should pull away. But I couldn't. "Yeah," I whispered. "I do." She kissed me, soft at first, then deeper, and I kissed her back. I kissed her like I was 25 again, like I had something left to give. When we finally pulled apart, she smiled. "I wasn't sure if you felt the same." "I do," I said, cupping her face in my hands. "I really do." That night, lying in bed, I stared at the ceiling and tried to process what had just happened. I was 57. She was 25. I was a divorced American with nothing to offer. She was a beautiful young woman with her whole life ahead of her. It didn't make sense, but it felt real. And I wanted it to be real so badly that I ignored every logical part of my brain telling me to slow down. I extended my trip, canceled my return flight, told myself I'd stay just 1 more week, then 2, then 3. Sherlyn and I spent every day together. We stopped calling it tours. We called it our time. She introduced me to her favorite local spots, the restaurants her family loved, the hidden beaches tourists never saw, the quiet mountain roads where we could drive for hours without seeing another soul. One evening, we were sitting at a small outdoor restaurant when she started crying, quietly at first, then harder. I reached across the table and took her hand. "What's wrong?" "It's my mom," she said, wiping her eyes. "She needs surgery. Her heart. The doctors say it's urgent, but we don't have the money." "How much?" I asked without thinking. She shook her head. "No, Derek. I wasn't asking for money. I just needed to tell someone." "I know," I said. "But how much?" She hesitated. $2,000. "But I'll figure it out. I always do." I squeezed her hand. "Let me help." "Derek, no, that's too much." "It's not," I said. "If I can help, I want to. Please." She looked at me with tears streaming down her face. "You'd do that for me?" "Of course," I said. And I meant it. I wanted to be her hero. I wanted to be the man who saved her, who fixed things, who mattered. The next day, I wired the money. She came to my hotel that night and threw her arms around me. "Thank you," she whispered into my neck. "You're my hero, Derek. I don't know what I would have done without you. I held her tight, feeling like I'd finally done something right, something that mattered. I told myself this was love, real love, the kind that shows up when someone needs you, the kind that doesn't ask for anything in return. But even then, a small voice in the back of my head whispered that I was being used. I ignored it, because the alternative was going back to Ohio alone, and I wasn't ready for that. Not yet. I was supposed to fly home. My return ticket was booked. My kids expected me back. But the night before my flight, Sherlyn came to my hotel room. She looked nervous, vulnerable. "Can we talk?" she asked. "Of course," I said, letting her in. She sat on the edge of the bed, hands folded in her lap. "I don't want you to leave, Sherlyn." "I know it's crazy," she said quickly. "I know we've only known each other a few weeks, but I feel something with you, Derek. Something I've never felt before, and I don't want to lose it." My heart was racing. "I feel it too." She looked up at me, eyes glistening. "Then stay, or let me come with you. I don't care where we are, as long as we're together." I should have been rational. I should have told her we needed to slow down. But I wasn't rational. I was 57 years old, and someone beautiful and young was telling me she wanted to be with me. So I canceled my flight. I called my kids and told them I was extending my trip indefinitely. I rented an apartment in Cebu City for 3 months. I told myself I was being smart. We'd take things slow. See how it worked. But the truth is, I was already all in. Sherlyn moved in 2 weeks later. She brought one small suitcase and a worn photo of her mother. "This is all I have," she said with a shy smile. "It's perfect," I said, pulling her close. For a while, it felt like a dream. We cooked together. We explored the city together. We fell asleep tangled in each other's arms every night. She made me feel young, alive, like I'd been given a second chance. But then the requests started. Small at first. "Derek, my brother needs help with his tuition. Just $500. I'll pay you back, I promise." I gave it to her without hesitation. Then it was her mother's medical bills again. Then the landlord raised the rent on her family's house. Then her cousin needed money for a business loan. Every week, there was something. And every week, I paid, because I loved her, because I wanted to be the man who took care of her, because I was terrified that if I said no, she'd leave. One afternoon, I found a receipt in her purse while looking for a pen. It was from an expensive restaurant in Ayala, a place we'd never been to together. The date was from 2 days ago. I stared at it, my stomach twisting. "Sherlyn, what's this?" I asked when she came home. She barely glanced at it. "Oh, that. I had a meeting with some clients, potential tour bookings. At night? At a fancy restaurant?" She looked at me, and her expression hardened just slightly. "Yes, Derek, it's called networking. I still have to work, you know." "I know. I just what?" She snapped. "You don't trust me?" "No, I do. I'm sorry. I didn't mean—" "Then stop questioning me," she said, her voice cold. "I'm doing the best I can." I apologized. I actually apologized, even though something in my gut told me she was lying. Because I was more afraid of losing her than I was of being a fool, I started noticing other things. Her phone was always face down. She'd leave the room to take calls. She'd disappear for hours and come back vague about where she'd been. One afternoon, I saw her on a video call, laughing in rapid Tagalog. When I walked into the room, she immediately hung up. "Who was that?" I asked. "My cousin," she said, not meeting my eyes. "You seemed happy." "I was. We were just catching up." But the way she smiled during that call wasn't the way she smiled at me anymore. It was brighter, freer, real. I pushed the thought away. I didn't want to be the jealous old foreigner. I didn't want to be that guy. One night, she came home late. I was sitting on the couch, trying to read, but I couldn't focus. When she walked in, I smelled it immediately. Cologne. Not mine. Where were you? I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. Out with friends, she said, kicking off her shoes. What friends? She turned to me, and for the first time, I saw irritation flash across her face. Are you serious right now? I'm just asking. You're acting like my father, Derek. I'm 25 years old. I'm allowed to have a life. I know that. Just what? You want to control me? You want me to ask permission every time I leave the house? No, of course not. I'm sorry. You should be, she said, storming into the bedroom. I sat there in the dark, feeling small, powerless. I'd become someone I didn't recognize, someone who apologized for having feelings, someone who was terrified of being alone. I hated myself for it, but I didn't know how to stop. A few days later, our landlord knocked on the door. Man Carlos was an older Filipino man with kind eyes and a knowing smile. He handed me a rent envelope and lingered for a moment. Everything okay, sir? He asked. Yeah, fine, I said. He glanced over my shoulder, making sure Sherlyn wasn't nearby, then lowered his voice. Be careful, sir. What do you mean? He didn't answer directly, just gave me a sad look and walked away. But I knew what he meant, and deep down, I knew he was right. That night, I checked her phone while she was in the shower. I know I shouldn't have. I know it was wrong, but I had to know. There were messages in Tagalog, dozens of them. I used Google Translate on a few. Most were mundane. Plans with friends, family stuff. But then I found one that made my blood run cold. It was from someone named June. The message said, "When are you coming over? I miss you." Her response, "Soon. Just need to handle some things first." I put the phone down, hands shaking. I wanted to confront her. I wanted to scream. But I didn't. I just sat there, staring at the wall, wondering how I'd let it get this far. Sherlyn came out of the bathroom, wrapped in a towel. You okay? Yeah, I lied. Just tired. She kissed my forehead. Get some rest. I'm going out for a bit. Where? Just errands, she said, grabbing her phone. I watched her leave, and I knew she was lying. I knew I was losing her, but I still couldn't bring myself to walk away. One evening, Sherlyn sat next to me on the couch and took my hand. She had that look on her face, the one that meant she wanted something. Derek, I've been thinking, she said softly. About what? About us. About the future. She paused. I want to go to America with you. My heart leapt. Really? Yes. I want to meet your kids. See where you're from. Maybe even stay, if things work out. I felt hope flood through me. This was it. Proof that she was serious. That this wasn't just about money. I'd love that. So let's do it, she said, smiling. Let's apply for a visa. I helped her with the tourist visa application. I wrote a sponsorship letter. I vouched for her financially. I submitted every document they asked for. We waited 3 weeks for a response. When the email came, Sherlyn read it first. Her face crumpled. Denied, she whispered. What? Why? She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. They said I don't have strong enough ties to the Philippines. They think I'll overstay. I held her while she cried. It's okay. We'll figure something else out. But she cried for 2 days straight. She barely ate, barely spoke. I felt helpless, useless. On the 3rd day, she came to me with red, swollen eyes. There's another option, she said quietly. What? A fiancé visa, a K1. If we're engaged, it's easier. I hesitated. We'd only been together a few months. But she looked at me with those desperate eyes and said, Don't you love me, Derek? Of course I do. Then why are you hesitating? I'm not. You just what? You don't want to marry me? No, I do. I'm just surprised. She stood up, anger flashing across her face. Forget it. I shouldn't have asked. Sherlyn, wait. I grabbed her hand. Yes, let's do it. Let's get engaged. She turned back to me, tears streaming down her face again. But this time, she was smiling. Really? Really? She threw her arms around me. I love you, Derek. I love you so much. I hired an immigration attorney. I paid the fees. I filled out every form. We submitted the K-1 petition and waited. Sherlyn was affectionate again. Sweet. She cooked my favorite meals. She held my hand in public. She made love to me like she meant it. I thought we'd turned a corner. I thought she really wanted this. One night, we celebrated the petition submission with champagne. She was happy, giggly. She left her phone on the counter while she went to the bathroom. It buzzed. I glanced at it. The message was in Tagalog, from someone named June again. I opened Google Translate and typed it in. My hands shook as I read the translation. Just a few more months, then I'm out. I stared at those words until they blurred. I heard the bathroom door open. I put the phone down and walked to the bedroom. I sat on the edge of the bed, trying to breathe, trying to think. You okay? Sherlyn asked, climbing into bed next to me. Yeah, I said, just tired. She kissed my cheek and rolled over. Within minutes, she was asleep. I sat there in the dark, staring at the wall, wondering if I should confront her, wondering if I'd misunderstood, wondering if I was crazy. But deep down, I knew. I knew what that message meant. I just didn't want to believe it. I didn't confront her. I told myself the message could mean anything. Maybe it was about her tour job. Maybe she was talking about leaving that, not me. Maybe I'd misunderstood the translation. I wanted to believe that so badly that I convinced myself it was true. So I kept going. I kept paying. I kept pretending. But I also started watching. I checked her phone when she was asleep. I followed her social media. I saw photos she posted with people I didn't know, friends, parties, places she never mentioned to me. She was living a whole life I knew nothing about. One night, she came home late again, later than usual. It was past midnight. I was sitting in the dark, waiting. Where were you? I asked when she walked in. She jumped. Jesus, Derek, you scared me. Where were you? Out with friends, I told you. Until midnight? She sighed, throwing her purse on the couch. Yes. Is that a crime? No, you just what? You want to interrogate me every time I come home? I'm not interrogating you. I'm asking a question. Well, stop, she snapped. I'm tired of this. I'm tired of you acting like you own me. I don't think I own you. Yes, you do. You think because you pay for things, you get to control me. But you don't. That's not fair, she laughed bitterly. Fair? You want to talk about fair? You brought me into your life. You made me promises. And now you're treating me like a prisoner. I'm not. You are, she shouted. You're suffocating me, Derek. You're acting like my father. Like I'm some child who can't make her own decisions. I sat there, stunned. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how we'd gotten here. I'm sorry, I whispered. I didn't mean to make you feel that way. She stared at me for a long moment, then shook her head. I'm going to bed. She walked past me into the bedroom and slammed the door. I sat on the couch, feeling like the walls were closing in. I'd become someone I didn't recognize. Someone weak, someone desperate, someone who apologized for caring, and I hated myself for it. Over the next few weeks, Sherlyn stayed at her mother's house more often. She said her mom needed help, that her brother was struggling, that she had to be there for her family. I understood, or at least I tried to, but every night she was gone, I lay awake wondering who she was really with, wondering if I'd already lost her. One afternoon, I decided to surprise her. I drove to her mother's house with flowers and her favorite street food, but when I knocked on the door, her mother answered with a confused look. Derek, what are you doing here? I came to see Sherlyn. Is she here? Her mother's confusion deepened. Sherlyn? She's not here. She hasn't been here all week. My stomach dropped. What? She said she was staying with you. In the city. I felt the ground shift beneath me. Oh, right. I must have gotten confused. Sorry to bother you. I walked back to my car in a daze. She'd been lying. She'd been lying to both of us. I drove around aimlessly for an hour, not sure what to do, not sure where to go. Then I saw her. She was at a cafe in Ayala, sitting across from a man around her age. They were holding hands, laughing. As I watched from my parked car, she leaned across the table and kissed him. Not a friendly kiss, a real kiss, the kind of kiss she used to give me. I sat there, frozen. I didn't cry. I didn't move. I just watched. Watched as she touched his face. Watched as he whispered something that made her laugh. Watched as they got up and walked away together, her hand in his. I don't know how long I sat there. It could have been minutes, could have been hours. Eventually, I drove back to the apartment. Sherlyn was already there, sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone. Hey, she said without looking up. Where were you? Driving, I said, my voice flat. Oh, well, I made dinner. It's in the kitchen. I stood there, staring at her. At this woman I thought I knew. This woman I'd given everything to. Where were you today? She glanced up. At my mom's. Why? No, you weren't. She froze. What? I went to your mom's house. She said you haven't been there all week. Her face went pale, then red, then hard. You went to my mom's house? Yes. Are you stalking me now? No, You are. You're checking up on me like I'm some criminal. I saw you, I said quietly, at the cafe. With him. The room went silent. She stared at me, and for a moment I saw panic flash across her face. Then it was gone, replaced by something cold, something cruel. So? She said. So? That's all you have to say? She stood up, crossing her arms. What do you want me to say, Derek? That I'm sorry? That it didn't mean anything? I want you to tell me the truth. She laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. The truth? Fine. You want the truth? I've been seeing him for 2 months. We were together before I met you. We never broke up. I felt like I'd been punched in the chest. Then why? Why did I stay with you? She shook her head. Because you made it easy. You paid for everything. You took care of my family. You gave me a place to live. You were useful. Useful, I repeated, the word tasting like poison. Yes, useful. What did you think this was, Derek? True love? You're almost 60 years old. I'm 25. Did you really think this was real? I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. She grabbed her purse. I'm leaving. Sherlyn, don't, she said, her voice sharp. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. You got what you wanted. You felt young again. You felt loved. And I got what I needed. Money. Security. We both used each other. So let's just call it even and move on. She walked to the door, then paused. For what it's worth, some of it was nice. You're not a bad guy, Derek. You're just not him. And then she was gone. I stood there in the empty apartment, listening to the sound of her footsteps fading down the hallway. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stood there, feeling like everything inside me had been hollowed out. She came back the next day to get her things. I wasn't there. I couldn't be. I went to a cheap hotel near the airport and stayed there, staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of what had happened. She took everything I'd given her, the clothes, the jewelry, the laptop, even the rice cooker. When I finally went back to the apartment 3 days later, it was empty. No note, no explanation, just empty. I sat on the floor in the middle of the living room and tried to figure out how I'd let it get this far. I'd spent over $30,000 in 6 months. On her family, on a fantasy. I'd lost my dignity. I'd lost my ability to trust. But more than that, I'd lost myself. I'd become so desperate to be loved that I ignored every warning sign, every red flag, every moment of doubt. I'd convinced myself that someone like her could love someone like me, and I'd been wrong. I blamed myself, not her. She saw an opportunity, and she took it, but I gave it to her. I handed her my bank account, my heart, my self-respect. I did that, not her, me, and I had to live with that. A few weeks later, I flew back to Ohio. I didn't tell my kids what happened. I didn't tell anyone. What was I going to say? That I'd fallen for a woman half my age and lost everything? That I'd been played like a fool? That I was exactly the kind of pathetic old man everyone warns about? So I kept it to myself. I went back to my empty house, the one my ex-wife didn't take, and I tried to start over. The first few months were brutal. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, replaying every moment, every conversation, every lie I'd believed. I kept asking myself how I could have been so blind, so stupid, so desperate. But eventually, the nights got easier, the memories got quieter, the shame started to fade. Not completely. It's still there, lurking in the background, but it doesn't control me anymore. I think about Sherlyn sometimes. Wonder if she's still with that guy. Wonder if she ever thinks about me. Wonder if any of it was real, even for a moment. But mostly, I think about myself, about the man I became, about how loneliness can make you do things you never thought you'd do, about how badly I wanted to be needed that I let someone take everything from me. I'm not angry anymore. Not at her, not at myself. I'm just tired, and a little bit wiser. I know now that love can't fix loneliness. That someone wanting you for what you can give them isn't the same as someone wanting you for who you are. I know now that I was looking for salvation in another person, and that was never going to work. I'm 58 now, still alone, still trying to figure out what comes next, but I'm not running anymore. I'm not chasing validation from someone who doesn't see me. I'm just here, in Ohio, in my empty house, learning to be okay with that, learning to be okay with me. It's not the ending I wanted, but it's the ending I needed, and maybe that's enough.